With the war reaching its 10-month mark, Zelensky finally has come to a consensus with reality, and this realization came on the eve of Christmas. While everyone around the world could hear the Christmas bells jingling, Ukrainians heard air raid sirens and explosions. While the world was busy decorating evergreen trees and exchanging gifts on the Christmas Eve, Ukrainians were lamenting a speech by their president, a speech that had a sense of grief in it. Hello and welcome to TFI Global, the foreign affairs and geopolitical analysis arm of the TFI Media Group. I'm your host Vedika. Let's begin. Zelensky's speech on the eve of Christmas was more somber than upbeat. Zelensky described a loss of love, hope, and even himself as the war hit the 10-month mark on Christmas Eve. The speech of Mr. President was like a pill that tastes sweet initially but leaves a bitter aftertaste. Unfortunately, all the holidays have a bitter aftertaste for us this year, and we can feel the traditional spirit of Christmas differently. Dinner at the family table cannot be so tasty and warm. There may be empty chairs around it, Zelensky said. Our houses and streets can't be so bright, and Christmas bells can ring not so loudly and inspiringly. Through air raid sirens or even worse, gunshots and explosions. And all this together can pose a bigger threat. It is a disappointment of their higher forces and their power of goodness and justice in the world. Loss of hope, loss of love, loss of myself. Volodymyr Zelensky instilled a sense of fear in his people by his grim speech. The president himself has now finally lost all hopes of winning the war, and it took him 305 days to realize that. Now, when even his allies have started backtracking on their support to the war-torn nation, it was inevitable for him to break down. Ukraine has since been able to survive the war owing to the aid he received from his Western buddies. Throughout the warfare, Ukraine kept on asking for monetary and military aids from the US and the West, but its constant bickering became a matter of irritation for them. They recently started to deny funneling aids to the war-torn nation any further. First Poland and Germany, and then even the US denied the country of their weapons. Recently, Zelensky paid a visit to Washington where his demand for weapons was turned down. This time, the US has ridiculed Ukraine's weapons request by saying that Ukraine soldiers don't know how to use the weaponry. According to the US defense officials, Washington will not provide it with M1 Abrams main combat tanks. To add to Zelensky's injuries, lately, Croatia too denied considering Ukraine as an ally and providing any aid to it as it will bring war to the Balkans. The Western world is slowly realizing that aiding Ukraine is doing nothing but dragging the war even further, and therefore, they have resorted to leaving Ukraine to fend for itself. When Russia invaded the country, the whole West jumped into the war in a bid to save Ukraine from the Russian wrath. From slapping a spate of sanctions on Russia to condemning it on the world stage, the West did all in its efforts to spread anti-Russia propaganda. The Western nations which toed the lines of the US have now fallen into the pit of crisis. US's ambitions have cost the Western world greatly due to quash supplies from Russia. They resorted to finding Russian gas alternatives but failed in their efforts. This eventually led these nations revoking their sanctions against Russia, and now many of them are taking a neutral stance on the war, leaving Ukraine in the lurch. Zelensky has finally come to his senses that Ukraine is left alone in the war zone. Neither Biden nor Ursula von der Leyen, not even Emmanuel Macron or Olaf Scholz are going to come to his rescue. The only way to end this war is by kowtowing to Vladimir Putin.